Imagine a town where silence speaks louder than words. A place where everyone knows the truth, yet no one dares to say it. In the summer of 1981, in the rural heart of Missouri, the people of a tiny farming town gathered in broad daylight, under a sweltering sun. They watched a man sit arrogantly in his pickup truck, puffing on a cigarette, his shotgun resting just behind the seat. He thought himself untouchable. For years, he had tormented this community, stealing, threatening, assaulting, terrorizing. And then, in an instant, everything changed. Gunfire erupted. He slumped over the wheel, lifeless. Dozens of people stood around him, dozens of witnesses. Yet when the police arrived and asked the most obvious question, who pulled the trigger, no one spoke, not a word. To this day, the killing remains officially unsolved. This is not fiction. This is the chilling true story of Skidmore, Missouri. A town with too many secrets. Skidmore is the kind of town most people would never think twice about. Nestled in Nottoway County, far from any bustling city, it was home to fewer than 600 people. The streets were quiet, the houses modest, and neighbors knew each other's names. But in places this small, secrets don't disappear, they just get buried deeper. And in Skidmore, the deepest, darkest secret of all was a man named Ken Rex McElroy. Ken McElroy was the kind of man who made enemies wherever he went. Born into poverty in 1934, he grew up hard, mean, and cunning. By the time he reached adulthood, he was already a figure of fear. He dropped out of school, barely literate, but quick to violence. He became known as the town bully, a thief, a poacher, and a man with an unpredictable temper. Over the years, he racked up an almost unbelievable list of charges: burglary, theft, arson, assault, child molestation, attempted murder. But time after time, he slipped through the cracks of the law. Witnesses were too afraid to testify. Jurors felt threatened. Lawyers walked away. Somehow, Ken always found a way to intimidate his way to freedom. It wasn't just his crimes that made him infamous. It was the way he flaunted them. He would park his truck outside the homes of those who dared stand against him, sitting there for hours with a rifle in full view. He would follow people down the road at night, his headlights glowing menacingly in their mirrors. He once shot a man during a dispute over a dog. Another time, he burned down a house in revenge. He beat people, stalked them, destroyed their property. He had more than 10 children by different women, some of them underage when he first pursued them. In a place like Skidmore, where everyone knew everyone, his reputation was carved into the collective memory of the town. People whispered his name in fear. They avoided eye contact when he passed. And yet, nothing ever seemed to stick. The breaking point came when McElroy shot a local grocer named Bo Bowenkamp in the neck. The crime shocked the town, but it didn't surprise them. McElroy had been harassing the Bowenkamp family for months, angry over a minor disagreement. Everyone believed this would finally be the case that put him behind bars. But even then, McElroy's lawyer, described by many as slick and ruthless, managed to postpone hearings, twist procedures, and keep him out on bail. The people of Skidmore watched in disbelief as their tormentor walked the streets once again, carrying a shotgun, smirking at those who crossed his path, reminding them with every glance that he was above the law. By July of 1981, the town had reached its breaking point. Rumors spread like wildfire. People whispered in hushed tones that something had to be done. Meetings were held, quiet gatherings, where the frustration and fear of decades boiled over. Neighbors who rarely agreed on anything found themselves united on one chilling idea. If the system couldn't stop Ken McElroy, then maybe they would. On the morning of July 10th, McElroy drove his silver and black Chevy pickup into town with his wife Trina by his side. They pulled up outside the D&G Tavern, a local bar where farmers, mechanics, and families gathered. Inside, word spread quickly. McElroy was here. A crowd began to form outside, dozens of men and women standing shoulder to shoulder under the blazing summer sun. Some say more than 30 people gathered that day, though exact numbers were never confirmed. What is certain is that the air was thick with tension, and everyone knew something was about to happen. McElroy eventually left the tavern, climbed back into his truck, and lit a cigarette. Trina sat beside him, uneasy, sensing something was wrong. People stood nearby, watching. Then, suddenly, shots rang out. A volley of bullets shattered the calm. McElroy jerked forward, his cigarette dropping from his lips as blood pooled across his shirt. His head slumped against the steering wheel. The man who had terrorized Skidmore for decades was dead, gunned down in broad daylight, surrounded by a crowd. And then, silence. A silence so heavy it was deafening. No one screamed, no one ran. The people simply stood there, staring at what had been done. When the authorities arrived, they asked the simplest question: who fired the shot? But the townspeople's lips were sealed. One by one, they looked at the ground, at the sky, at each other, but never at the police. Even McElroy's wife, though she claimed to know, could not convince a jury. Grand juries were convened. Questions were asked, but witnesses were evasive. The shooter, perhaps more than one, was never named. The case made headlines across America. A man shot dead in front of a crowd of witnesses, and not a single person willing to testify? To outsiders, it sounded like something out of a Western, a vigilante tale of justice served at the end of a gun. But to the people of Skidmore, it was more complicated. Some believed justice had finally been done, that the town was safer without McElroy's shadow looming over it. Others lived in fear that speaking up might invite retaliation from whoever had pulled the trigger, and some, quietly, wondered if silence had simply replaced one kind of terror with another. The killing of Ken McElroy turned Skidmore into a legend, the subject of books, documentaries, and even a movie. The journalist Harry N. McLean wrote a best-selling account called In Broad Daylight, which was later adapted for television. Yet even after all the attention, all the speculation, the central truth remained hidden. Who killed McElroy? Was it one person or several acting together? Did the sheriff look the other way? Did the town itself decide, in one chilling moment, that justice would be done not by the courts, but by the barrel of a gun? As the years went on, Skidmore's reputation grew darker. The town became a symbol of vigilante justice, a place where silence was the law. But the secrets didn't end with McElroy. In the decades that followed, Skidmore saw other disturbing crimes. A young woman named Branson Perry vanished from her home in 2001, never to be seen again. In 2004, a pregnant woman named Bobby Jo Stinnett was brutally murdered, her unborn baby cut from her womb in a crime that shocked the nation. To outsiders, it seemed as though Skidmore was cursed, a quiet town haunted by violence, where the past refused to rest. And yet, through it all, the murder of Ken Rex McElroy remains the defining moment. Ask anyone who lived in Skidmore at the time, and you'll see it in their eyes, the weight of a secret carried for decades. Some may have been relieved, even grateful, that the reign of terror ended that day. Others may still wake at night, haunted by the sound of gunfire, by the knowledge that justice was served, but not in a courtroom. The truth lies buried, locked inside the memories of those who were there. Memories they have guarded fiercely, even as the years turned into decades. What does it mean when an entire town refuses to speak? Was it courage, or was it cowardice? Was it a community standing together against a bully, or a collective sin no one dares confess? In the end, Skidmore became more than just a town. It became a symbol of what happens when the law fails, when fear festers, and when silence becomes the most powerful weapon of all. To this day, no one has ever been charged with McElroy's murder. His killer, or killers, walked away into the crowd, shielded by the silence of their neighbors. And Skidmore remained, a town with too many secrets, its name forever linked to a mystery that may never be solved. So the next time you drive through a small town, past the faded houses and quiet streets, remember this: Every place has its shadows. Some are whispered about in passing. Some are buried deep, known only to those who live them. And some, like Skidmore's, linger forever, a haunting reminder that silence can be just as deadly as a gun.